What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another Tottenham update, and today we will be talking about potential managers. And first up, let's talk about Julian Nagelsmann, as Florian Plettenberg saying that Tottenham have inquired about Julian Nagelsmann but have not held concrete talks. He wants to know what role he would play in the choice of the club's summer signings, and Romano says that Nagelsmann for sure is in the race to be the next Tottenham manager. And this is coming before we saw pictures of Daniel Levy and Scott Munn in the airport, apparently flying to Germany. We heard from our source before this picture came out, actually, that not Levy, but Scott Munn will be flying to Germany for the second time in the space of a week or a couple of weeks. Who knows who it's going to speak to? I mean, it could be Nagelsmann, it could be the next manager or one of the managers that we'll be speaking about on this update, or it could be someone like Glasner or even a player. So we don't know at this stage.
Yeah, we've heard a few things about Scott Munn and his travelling exploits. We heard that he went to Holland to speak with the representatives of Arne Slot a couple of weeks ago. We heard last week that he's travelled to Germany twice now. We were kind of hesitant to report it just because the official line from the club is Scott Munn doesn't start work till 1st of July, so we weren't 100% sure how accurate the information is, but it seems as though Scott Munn has clearly gotten to work early, maybe in an unofficial capacity.
Yeah.
But like, I think Paratici, similarly to him, he started work earlier than officially he was, and I think it makes sense, doesn't it? Because although they officially start work on 1st of July, you can have conversations outside of a work capacity and claim it's not work related or whatever. Yeah. So that is interesting that he seems to have travelled to Germany a couple of times to have these conversations. Obviously, the managerial search is well underway. There was a report, I can't remember who it was from, saying that Nagelsmann also needs to be convinced of Tottenham's sporting direction. I think that might have been from the Daily Mail. And that, for me, like when I read that kind of report, that's been the big sticking point for me as to whether we can convince someone like Julian Nagelsmann to come here. Because when he asked that question, I've always said this, right now, when he asked that question, what is our answer? We don't have an answer. That's the big problem right now. So we need to come up with this plan and a strategy on a sporting front so we can bring people like Nagelsmann here and we can tell them, look, this is the direction we want to go and this is our strategy. This is where we've seen the team and all this kind of stuff. Right now, if Nagelsmann comes here with no sporting director, we don't really have a concrete answer. Like, we're kind of relying on him to bring it in a way when he comes here. And is that good enough for a club like Tottenham? Definitely not. But for obviously him pulling out the Chelsea race, we know that increases our chances of getting him in. I've still yet to hear any concrete source or reliable information saying Nagelsmann is really interested in coming to Tottenham right now.
Yeah, I mean, the only ones that have said that are kind of reports like Bild and CF Bayern. I mean, nothing too concrete and nothing too reliable. But what's interesting in here when he says he wants to know the role he would play in the choice of the club's summer signings. This morning on Talk Sport was a chap called David Webb, who used to work at Spurs with Pochettino and with Paul Mitchell in the recruitment side of things, and he was talking about the dynamic at Spurs of recruiting players and how it's all done. You know, there's a big narrative within the Spurs fan base saying Levy is way too involved and Levy just just micromanages everything, and he kind of alluded to it being the same thing. He said the first year of Pochettino didn't really have a say in transfers. When it got to the second year, when he got more success at the club, he got more trust from Daniel Levy, and he got the final say on players that were to come through this door, so he could say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
People like Alderweireld and Wanyama.
Yeah, people like that. But the fact of the matter is, he also said that Daniel Levy also stuck his neck in at the beginning stages of recruitment, saying that I don't want this player for this reason, I do want this player for this reason. And there were a lot of players, he said, not a lot maybe, but there were a number of players that we had at Hotspur Way and that Pochettino wanted, and Daniel Levy couldn't get over line for one reason or another. Not just Daniel, but I think he was talking about Rebecca Keppelhorn as well. Yeah,
and we know for a fact that Mane was like very close to joining Tottenham, and apparently like he was like shown around the training ground at one point, and we balked at Southampton's 35 million price. We thought it was too much, and then we ended up signing Sissoko a few weeks later for a similar price. So I think those are maybe the triangle. I imagine we had Mane and Sissoko that season. You know, we might well have won the league. Like, you know what I mean?
And yeah, 100%. And he was airing his frustrations because they do the hard work of recruiting the players. Poch does, had the final say and says, yes, I want this player. But then Levy is always, I mean, he said it's always came down to money, and obviously it came down to money, and he was always the one that held it back at that stage. And it's so frustrating because when you're looking at Mane, 35 million, Jack Grealish as well was one of them. It could be one of them for a minimal fee. I think it was like 15, 20 million or something like that, ended up going for 100 million. When you're looking at those kind of players at that time, they really could have pushed us onto the next level. And he was talking out of frustration, saying, you know, if we got those players through the door, the trajectory of the club could have gone in a completely different way.
Yeah, because it was a very delicate time at that point, because we were on the cusp of like something brilliant. We'd built a really great structure. It just needed to like sprinkled in a bit of talent, and we didn't do it. Yeah. And it's different when the structure falls down and then you add the talent on top of a faltering structure, which is what we did. Then it's a lot harder to kind of get back to that level. Whereas like a bit like Arsenal now, where they're kind of striking while the iron's hot. I know they've bottled the league, but it's separate. Like they signed Trossard, they went big like when they on top to kind of go again in a way, not rest on their laurels, and that's not what we did, unfortunately. And I'm hoping he's learning from his mistakes. The history say he doesn't, because we know under Mourinho and Conte the transfer windows have been pretty horrific. I'm pretty sure Levy's had a big say in a lot of these transfer windows, a lot of these transfers. People like Matt Doherty, I'm pretty sure the agent probably came to him and said, look, this guy's available, do you want him, kind of thing. It was more of that relation. We know people like Spence he was heavily involved in. So it's very frustrating that Levy's continuing to have that kind of control.
The fact of the matter is, Levy or any chairman or any one of that ilk should not be at the beginning stages of the recruitment phase of bringing in a player. Someone like Daniel Levy should be there right at the end, just to sign off the deal, just to sign the checks, and that's it. That's it. You know, that's why you have a recruitment structure to earmark these players. Daniel Levy, whatever you want to say about him, or any chairman this goes for, to be honest, not just Daniel Levy, they don't have the expertise of recruitment, of the footballing, of the knowledge of what players that the club need to bring in. They're money men, they're businessmen. They work really well on the other side of the football club, bringing in the money with the sponsorship deals and building up the area of Tottenham, the stadium and stuff like that. So yes, they should have a negotiation period right at the end, but that's the only time that they should come into the transfers.
I'm sure someone like Richarlison as well. Like, I doubt that was a recruitment thing. I reckon Levy got wind, look, we can get him for 60 million, that kind of thing. I remember a very famous quote from Harry Redknapp on transfer deadline day saying that Levy called him up at 11 p.m. saying, look, Charlie Adams available, do you fancy it? Like that was kind of his kind of Levy's strategy, and obviously we failed at that point, but like that is case in point how Levy operates. And I think in this day and age where everything's so data driven, recruitment from the other clubs right now is so geared towards getting your team right and the structure right. You look at Man City and how they do their recruitment. Look at Brighton, even teams with smaller resources, how they do their recruitment. It's on a different level to us, and we're just kind of behind the times at the moment.
Yeah, and more of a scattergun approach kind of thing with players. And, you know, the likes of Matt Doherty, Richarlison and these kind of players, I kind of like envisage just Levy like, oh, you know what, Matt Doherty had a really good season at Wolves last year. Why not bring him in? He's cheap.
Exactly. I don't think we do our... And even the reports we're hearing from, about Spurs, how they've done a lot of financing since Paratici came in their recruitment and getting data analysts and stuff through the door and in the recruitment side. But then you also hear that they also feel they've got not a lot of autonomy and no one really listens to them, and that's also a big issue. Like if we have that kind of our disposal, we have to be utilising it, and I just feel like we don't.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like.
And it kind of makes me think, like, why does Levy spend so much on like bringing in recruitment staff and personnel around that sector when like he's so heavily involved in everything?
Ego.
So like
ego. Yeah. That's what it is. He wants to be at the center of it. He wants to know. He wants to have that feeling like he's the one who's made the deal. And like, look at that player. Because he probably had, like, I'm sure Van der Vaart was that kind of deal as well. But that was a success. And so he looks at deals like that and thinks, look, I actually do have something. I actually do know stuff. But actually, he's got to realise that he doesn't.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's move on. Let's talk about Kompany, because we kind of drifted away from Julian Nagelsmann there. But let's talk about Vincent Kompany. Fabrizio Romano says that Vincent Kompany is one to watch this summer, as Spurs have already had direct torts with him. In terms of Kompany, I mean, look, we've spoken about him a lot, but it does seem that Nagelsmann, Kompany and Slot are really the three front runners at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does seem that way. We know that Kompany, he's now, he's promoted already with Burnley. It's going to take a lot of convincing to get him out of Burnley right now, even though you should think that Spurs are a bigger pull, but it's gonna be very difficult for him to leave a job where he's doing very well. He's very highly thought of. He's only been there a year, and to leave that kind of job for a team like Tottenham, where if things don't go right very quickly, then he is risking his reputation a bit, because what if it is a disaster after 6 months and we end up sacking him all of a sudden? His reputation's has gone downhill a bit all of a sudden, and whereas it's continuing to go at Burnley, all he has to do is keep them up and his reputation grows.
Yeah, I don't think you can ruin a reputation in 6 months, to be honest, and I think that everyone knows.
Look at Gerrard.
Yeah, I think that's different because it's Aston Villa, and obviously Aston Villa. Do you think Gerrard's ruined his reputation?
Is he getting another Premier League club right now?
Well, not right this second, but I think he will eventually get one.
He has to go back down in the leagues, in my opinion.
Do you reckon?
I don't think he's getting another Premier League job right now.
The thing is with Spurs, everyone knows it's a long-winded job and it's not going to be a success now. So I think if Kompany comes in the first 6 months and doesn't show success, then I don't think that ruins his reputation, in my opinion. I think that he needs to be judged over a long stretch of time.
I'm not saying it ruins it completely. I'm saying it could very well take a hit if things don't go right. The expectation of Tottenham is whatever you want to say, it's still going to be very much higher than it is at Burnley. And next season, he'll know if he can get Burnley playing good football and staying in the Premier League, even if that's playing good football and finishing 17th, everyone will look at that and think, wow, what a great job he's done. Whereas at Tottenham, we still need to be competing for at least top 6 and probably playing good football as well. And if things aren't going right, if we're like mid-table obscurity, like 6 months in, and then and we end up like sacking him for one reason or another, all of a sudden people will think twice about Kompany, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but as well, like for us competing in the top 6, I don't even think that I think we might drop out the top 6 over the next couple of years. It's such a big rebuild job here that people actually underestimate how big it is and how far we might actually fall over the next year or so.
Which is why I don't think he should come here right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But like, imagine he doesn't do so great over the next 6 months, but then if he gets given the job over a 2-3 year stretch of time and does a great job, I mean, you're talking about him being one of the next big managers in the game.
Definitely. And if we stick with it, then it could be a good job. But it's about whether this board have the nerve to stick with a young manager like Kompany, right?
Yeah,
like
They have to.
I think if it was Nagelsmann, I do think the board, I think maybe there's a bit more, he has a bit more credit in the bank in terms of his previous jobs to stick with him. Whereas Kompany, he doesn't have that same credit.
I think no matter who comes in, no matter what, look, they might not follow this structure, but no matter who it is, we need to give them an extended amount of time. If it doesn't go well from the off, we need to stick with them. If it's still not going well after a year, we still need to stick with them, in my opinion, because we need a bit of longevity and continuity now. This chopping and changing every 6-18 months is not working, and it's never going to work.
I agree, but then you have a situation like Nuno, who after 10 games, everyone felt like he had to go. You know what I mean? And they do have those situations.
You need to pick the right guy, and Nuno was never the right guy.
Of course, yeah, 100%.
But let's move on to the last manager we're going to talk about today. And it's a new manager's name to the list, and this is what I was alluding to with Scott Munn and Levy travelling out to Germany, because it could be to speak to this chap called Bo Svensson, manager of Mainz. James Ollie of ESPN saying that Mainz boss Bo Svensson is being considered for the Tottenham Hotspur vacancy. And this is an interesting one because Mainz do know how to pick their managers. I mean, Jurgen Klopp was there before he went to Borussia Dortmund. Thomas Tuchel was there before he went to Borussia Dortmund as well. And Bo Svensson's doing a great job there this year.
Yeah, they seem to have a conveyor belt of talented managers at Mainz, which is impressive. He has taken them from a team that was finishing about 15th or 14th every year to a team now consecutive top 8 finishes. They're currently 9th at the moment. They do play a back three system, quite aggressive as well. So it's one of those that you'll look at and you'll probably scoff at his name, but I think he's also the kind of manager that Tottenham need right now. Someone who's up and coming, someone who needs to prove himself and will jump at the chance to get the job. I'm not saying that I would want him necessarily. I don't necessarily know that much about him, although I know some basics. But it's one of those managers where I guess it's very different to the Mourinho's and the Contes, who felt like they were doing Tottenham a favour. He would probably be very honoured and proud to like be Tottenham manager, and he'll feel like this is a massive opportunity for him again because of his little notoriety and because of his maybe lack of coaching experience. He's only had 2 jobs in his career. He's had Mainz, and he was in the Austrian league before then, where he did fairly well. I guess if again immediately if things start to wobble like they did, like if he has to start like Nuno did, is it a case of Levy looking at, oh, this guy's just not the right guy? Whereas if it was an Nagelsmann and he had a wobble similar to what Nuno did, at least he has that in the bank of what he did before, and they can say, look, I think this guy's worth sticking with. So that's a big question mark whether again he wants to come into this club right now. But I do think him, like Slot, people like these up and coming managers who are getting on their up as opposed to maybe on their down, maybe that's the way we need to go.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, Bo Svensson, I don't really know too much about him, but when you look at the face of how well Mainz are doing, I mean, they beat Bayern Munich 3-1 a week ago or 2 weeks ago. He really is playing some decent stuff over there. And like I said before, with this managerial kind of conveyor belt that they do have there with Klopp and Tuchel, maybe he could be the next big thing, but it remains to be seen. But let me know in the comment section below if you do know anything about Bo Svensson. Let us know your thoughts on him in the comment section below. But that is our update on the managerial situation today. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Like, subscribe and comment, and as always,
come on you Spurs.